The restaurant was alive with activity. Waiters and waitresses hurried between tables, balancing plates stacked high with sizzling dishes, while soft jazz played in the background. The low hum of conversation mixed with the clinking of silverware, creating a sophisticated atmosphere. For Maria, it was just another evening on shift at one of the most exclusive restaurants in the city. Maria had worked here for 2 years. Her uniform, a crisp black apron with a name tag, had become part of her identity. She was used to serving the city's elite, but tonight, something felt different. It wasn't the usual crowd of executives, or tourists seeking a taste of luxury, it was her table. Maria had just delivered a glass of wine to a corner booth when she saw her. Kim Kardashian. The global icon, sitting right in front of her, looking as flawless as the magazines depicted her. Maria paused for a second, letting the reality of the moment sink in. This was Kim Kardashian, one of the most famous women on the planet, right here, mere inches from her. But Maria didn't have time to gawk. Her manager, Mr. Jenkins, a no-nonsense kind of guy, was already heading in her direction. "Maria," he said, his voice sharp, "Kim Kardashian just arrived. You're on her table tonight. No mistakes, got it?" Maria nodded quickly, taking in a deep breath. She knew exactly what was at stake. Messing up with a celebrity would not only ruin her reputation at this restaurant, but it could also cost her the only job she had. The pressure was on. She adjusted her apron, plastered a smile on her face, and walked over to the table. Kim looked up from her phone and smiled warmly. "Hi. Are you Maria?" Maria blinked, taken aback. Kim knew her name. "Yes, that's me," she said, trying to sound calm despite her racing heart. "How may I assist you tonight?" Kim's smile widened, but there was a hint of vulnerability in her eyes. "I'm so sorry to bother you, but I could really use some advice. There's something personal I've been struggling with, and you seem like the kind of person who could help me out." Maria's mind raced. Was she being serious? Was this some kind of joke? She glanced around nervously, but no one else seemed to be paying attention. "Of course," Maria replied, her voice steady despite her nerves. "What's on your mind?" Kim leaned in a little, lowering her voice so only Maria could hear. "I've been feeling lost. The pressure, the constant spotlight. I don't know who I can trust anymore. I feel like I'm constantly letting people down." Maria could sense the realness in Kim's voice. Despite her fame and fortune, this wasn't the glamorous life Maria had imagined. Kim Kardashian, the celebrity everyone adored, was struggling in ways Maria could only begin to understand. "I get it," Maria said, her own experiences of hardship flashing before her eyes. She had felt the weight of expectations too, back when her family had struggled, when every decision felt like it carried the weight of her future. "But you don't have to do this alone. It's okay to lean on others. And it's okay to take a step back and breathe." Kim's eyes softened as Maria spoke. For a moment, Maria saw a side of Kim that no paparazzi could capture, just a woman, feeling vulnerable and human. Maria didn't know what compelled her to say the words she did next, but it felt right. "If you need someone to talk to, I'm here. Sometimes all it takes is a fresh perspective, you know." Kim nodded, a look of relief washing over her face. "Thank you. I don't think I've met someone so grounded in a while. I really appreciate it." Maria gave a gentle nod before stepping back, her heart still pounding from the surreal experience. She couldn't believe she had just shared such an intimate moment with a celebrity. But just as she turned to walk away, Mr. Jenkins approached, his expression cold. He motioned for Maria to follow him, and she hesitated for a second before reluctantly doing so. "Maria," Mr. Jenkins began as soon as they were out of earshot, "you don't get to make personal connections with the customers. You're here to serve, not to get involved. Understood?" Maria felt a lump rise in her throat. She had done what she thought was right, helping someone in need, yet here she was being reprimanded. "I was just trying to help, Mr. Jenkins," Maria explained quietly, trying to keep her composure. Kim seemed like she was struggling, and "Don't make excuses," he cut her off, his voice firm. "You crossed a line. If you're here to get cozy with celebrities, you need to remember who's in charge. Keep it professional." Maria nodded, the weight of the reprimand sinking in. She had tried to do something good, but it was clear that kindness wasn't always appreciated. As she returned to the floor, her thoughts wandered. Was it worth it? Was helping Kim Kardashian really the mistake everyone seemed to think it was? Then, as she passed by Kim's table again, she saw Kim glance up at her with a small, grateful smile. For a fleeting moment, Maria felt validated. She hadn't made a mistake, at least, not in her eyes. The question still lingered, though. What happens when doing the right thing ends up getting you in trouble? Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. Maria thought, even as she worked. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Little did she know, this was just the beginning of a much bigger story. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Maria had always known that life wasn't going to be easy. Born into a working-class family in the heart of a tough neighborhood, she learned early on that nothing came without hard work. Her mother, a single parent, juggled multiple jobs just to keep food on the table. Maria often found herself walking home from school alone, passing by the worn-down houses and struggling families that defined their block. But despite everything, Maria never allowed herself to become part of the hopelessness surrounding her. Her mother, Eleanor, was her rock. A small woman with an iron will, Eleanor made sure Maria never felt like she was missing out. They didn't have much, no fancy clothes, no extravagant vacations, not even the latest gadgets. But Eleanor made sure they had love, and that was worth more than anything money could buy. "I don't care if you have $100 or 100 million, her mother would always say. What matters is your heart, your integrity, and how you treat people." Those words stayed with Maria throughout her life. They were a reminder that even in the hardest times, kindness was her true currency. School was a refuge for Maria. While her peers were caught up in trivial drama, she buried herself in books, determined to escape the constraints of her environment. Education became her escape plan, the one thing that would get her out. She excelled academically, often finishing homework assignments hours before they were due. But it wasn't just the work she thrived on, it was the idea of a better future, the idea that she could break free from the cycle that had trapped so many before her. At 18, after graduation, Maria faced a decision. She could take the scholarship offers from several universities, or she could stay and help her mother. Eleanor had never asked for help, but Maria knew how much the weight of their struggles wore her mother down. But at the same time, she couldn't shake the feeling that leaving would be her only shot at something bigger. After much internal debate, Maria made the decision to move to the city. She wasn't just running away, she was running towards something, an opportunity, a chance to create a life that was hers. Eleanor was heartbroken, but she supported Maria's decision, encouraging her daughter to follow her dreams. "Go make something of yourself," Eleanor had said, tears glistening in her eyes. "But don't forget where you came from." Maria kept that promise. The city was everything Maria imagined and more, fast-paced, challenging, but full of possibilities. It wasn't easy. She took odd jobs at first, retail, babysitting, anything to make ends meet. But soon, she found a job as a waitress at one of the most prestigious restaurants in the city. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady. And the tips, well, they helped pay the bills, even if she still lived in a small apartment with creaky floors and outdated furniture. The restaurant was known for its exclusivity. Celebrities and high-powered executives were regulars, and Maria quickly learned to navigate the world of fancy dinners and stiff etiquette. She worked hard, always with the goal in mind that this job was just a stepping stone, a way to make connections, to learn the ropes, and hopefully, move up. But no matter how hard she worked, there was something about the atmosphere of the restaurant that felt off. The managers were cold, demanding, and the pressure to maintain a perfect facade was overwhelming. Maria started to wonder if this was truly the life she had worked so hard to create. One evening, during one of her shifts, Maria found herself in the break room, staring at her reflection in the small, cracked mirror. She was wearing her usual black uniform, her apron tied tightly around her waist, her hair pulled back into a neat bun. But deep down, she felt like something was missing. Is this it? She asked herself. Is this the future I've worked so hard for? But there was no time to dwell on such thoughts. The orders piled up, the customers kept coming, and the clock never seemed to stop. Maria buried herself in her work, always reminding herself of her goals. Her dreams weren't just about escaping her past, they were about something bigger, creating a better life for herself, proving to her mother that the sacrifice had been worth it. Maria wasn't just working for a paycheck, she was working for a chance at freedom. Her relationships with her co-workers were her only comfort. There was Jane, the sarcastic bartender who always had a funny quip to share, and Mark, the chef, who was gruff on the outside but always had a soft spot for Maria. They had become a small family of sorts, people who understood what it was like to be stuck in the grind, just trying to survive. Despite the challenges, Maria always kept her spirits high. She refused to let the harsh realities of her job or the demanding customers break her. She was resilient, just like her mother had taught her. And though she worked in a world of high society, she always remembered her roots. That was her strength, she had something those high-end customers didn't, an unshakable foundation built on love, hard work, and integrity. But Maria couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to change. She didn't know how or why, but the feeling lingered in the back of her mind. Little did she know, the encounter with Kim Kardashian that night would be the turning point in her life. It was another busy evening at the restaurant. The air buzzed with the usual mix of chatter, clinking glasses, and the soft hum of conversation between the staff and customers. Maria was used to the chaos by now, but tonight felt different. There was an edge to the atmosphere, something that kept her on high alert. Maria glanced at the reservation list as she walked past the host stand. Her eyes narrowed when she saw a name she recognized, Kim Kardashian. Her heart skipped a beat. She had just helped Kim earlier that week, but this time, it felt different. The restaurant had been bustling with a level of excitement that Maria had never seen before, and the presence of Kim, along with her entourage, was clearly causing a stir. Word had spread that she would be dining there again, and everyone seemed to be on edge, eager to impress. The tension was palpable. Maria approached the table where Kim was seated, a mix of anxiety and excitement swirling within her. She forced a calm smile, the one she always used when greeting guests, but there was something unsettling in the air. Kim looked up, offering a smile in return. She was the same as always, flawless, confident, and completely at ease. But there was a flicker of something behind her eyes. A hint of unease. Maria noticed it right away. "Hi again, Maria," Kim greeted, her voice warm but carrying a quiet sadness that seemed to linger beneath the surface. "Hello, Kim," Maria replied, doing her best to maintain her composure. "How can I help you tonight?" Kim hesitated for a moment before speaking. "You know, Maria, I've been thinking a lot about our last conversation. I didn't realize how much I needed to hear what you said. I don't know if you realize this, but you've made a huge impact on me." Maria wasn't sure how to respond to that. She had only spoken a few kind words, but it seemed to have made a deeper impression than she could have ever imagined. Before Maria could say anything, her manager, Mr. Jenkins, appeared from nowhere. He gave her a pointed look, a silent warning not to linger too long at the table. Maria took a step back, nodding politely to Kim before turning to leave. But as she walked away, she overheard Mr. Jenkins speaking to Kim, his tone low but unmistakably sharp. "Miss Kardashian, we have a special table reserved for you tonight, just a little more privacy," he said, almost in a whisper, as if trying to avoid attention. "We want to make sure you're completely comfortable." Maria's heart sank. She had heard rumors about Mr. Jenkins and his cold, calculating approach to celebrities, but hearing it firsthand made her stomach churn. She knew what he was doing. He was trying to make Kim feel like she was something special, something more important than the other customers. It was a constant game at the restaurant, appeasing the elite and bending over backward to cater to their every whim. It didn't sit well with Maria, especially when she thought about the people in her own life who struggled every day just to make ends meet. Maria returned to the kitchen, trying to shake off the uneasy feeling that had settled in her chest. The night dragged on, but the tension never eased. She found herself distracted, wondering why she couldn't get Kim's words out of her mind. "You've made a huge impact on me." As the night wore on, the restaurant became even busier. The sound of plates clattering, customers talking, and wine glasses being refilled created a constant din. But there was another sound Maria had come to dread, Mr. Jenkins' voice, always so smooth and authoritative, giving instructions and making demands. "Maria, get over here," Mr. Jenkins barked, his voice sharp enough to pierce the chaos of the night. "There's a problem with the VIP room. Fix it." Maria's stomach twisted. She hated the VIP room. It was where the restaurant's most influential clients dined, the ones who expected nothing less than perfection. And for Maria, it was a reminder of everything she hated about the world she was trying to escape. She walked over, her shoes clicking sharply on the floor, and found Mr. Jenkins standing by the door to the VIP room. "What's the problem?" she asked, trying to keep the frustration out of her voice. "There's a discrepancy with the reservation," he said curtly. "The client is unhappy. We need to make it right, now." Maria nodded, but something inside her snapped. She had dealt with more difficult customers than she could count, but the VIPs, especially those who carried an air of entitlement, always pushed her to the edge. "I'll handle it," she said, her voice steady but laced with a quiet defiance. As she stepped into the VIP room to speak with the customer, she saw something that made her heart drop. It was a well-known businessman, one who had been a regular at the restaurant for years. He was sitting at a table surrounded by colleagues, but the moment he saw Maria, his face twisted into a sneer. "This is unacceptable," he said, his voice cutting through the air. "Do you expect me to sit here with my guests while there's an issue with my reservation?" Maria's mind raced, but she kept her cool. "I apologize for the inconvenience, sir. We'll resolve the issue immediately." But just as she was about to walk away, Mr. Jenkins appeared at her side, his cold eyes flashing. "Maria, take a step back," he said, his voice clipped. "I'll handle this. You just keep the service going." Maria's frustration boiled over, but she forced herself to smile and nod. It was clear, no matter what she did, she would never be more than a servant in their eyes. She would never be treated as an equal, no matter how hard she worked. She turned away, but as she did, her eyes met Kim Kardashian's. Kim was seated at a table in the corner, watching the exchange with quiet intensity. There was no judgment in her gaze, just an understanding that Maria could feel deep in her bones. Maria couldn't help but feel a pang of hope. Maybe, just maybe, there was something more to this story than she'd imagined. But for now, the pressure was mounting. And it wasn't just from the customers, it was from the weight of her own choices. The night dragged on, but Maria couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to happen. It wasn't just the constant stress of the restaurant or the mounting pressure from Mr. Jenkins, it was something bigger. The weight of it all pressed against her chest like a storm on the horizon, ready to burst. As the evening began to wind down and the VIP room cleared out, Maria was cleaning the last of the tables when she noticed a familiar figure walk into the restaurant. It was Kim Kardashian, alone. There was no entourage, no bodyguards, no flashbulbs from paparazzi, just her, walking in with the same quiet confidence but a noticeable air of uncertainty about her. Maria blinked in surprise. What was Kim doing here by herself? Kim made her way to an empty table near the corner, and Maria hesitated for a moment. This was unlike anything she had seen before. The last time she'd seen Kim, she was surrounded by her team, looking every bit the celebrity. But tonight, there was no entourage. There was only the woman behind the public persona, someone who looked weary, almost fragile. Maria approached her, trying to keep the shock off her face. "Hi, Kim," Maria said, forcing a smile. "What can I get for you tonight?" Kim looked up and smiled weakly. "I was hoping for a quiet meal, something simple." Maria nodded, taken aback by the request. She had never seen Kim so vulnerable. "Of course. I'll get you the menu." As Maria walked away, she couldn't help but glance back at Kim. There was something about her presence, something raw, something that spoke of exhaustion and inner turmoil. It was as if, for the first time, Maria was seeing the real Kim Kardashian. Maria returned to the table with the menu, and as she set it down, Kim's eyes locked onto hers. "You know, Maria," Kim said, her voice soft, almost distant. "I've been thinking a lot about our last conversation. I don't think you realize how much it meant to me. You said something about not letting the world dictate who I am. I just keep thinking about it. I'm always surrounded by people telling me what I should do, how I should look, how I should act. But I don't know anymore. I don't feel like I can be myself." Maria stood there, frozen for a moment, unsure of how to respond. Kim Kardashian, the person everyone thought they knew, was revealing a side of herself that no one had ever seen. It was the kind of vulnerability Maria had rarely witnessed, especially from someone who seemed to have it all. "I think everyone feels that way sometimes," Maria said quietly, sitting down across from Kim without thinking. "But you have to remember, you're the one who gets to decide who you are. Not anyone else." Kim smiled faintly, the weight of her words hanging between them. "It's just hard, you know. When everyone expects you to be perfect, it's easy to forget who you really are." Maria understood all too well. She had spent so much of her life trying to live up to other people's expectations, her mother's, the people at the restaurant, the guests. But the more she tried to be what others wanted her to be, the more she lost sight of herself. For a brief moment, the two women sat in silence, the world around them fading into the background. It felt like time had slowed down, and in that moment, Maria saw Kim not as a celebrity, but as a person, someone struggling with the same doubts and fears that Maria herself faced every day. Suddenly, Maria's phone buzzed in her pocket, breaking the moment. She glanced down at the screen. It was a text from Jane, the bartender. "Hey, heads up, Mr. Jenkins is looking for you. Big problem in the back." Maria's heart sank. She had been hoping for a brief escape from the chaos, but it seemed her reprieve had ended. "I'm sorry, Kim," Maria said, standing up. "I need to check on something. But I'll be right back, okay?" Kim nodded, her eyes holding a quiet understanding. "Take your time. I'll be here." Maria stepped away, her mind racing as she made her way toward the back of the restaurant. She found Mr. Jenkins in his usual spot by the kitchen, his expression grim. "What's going on?" Maria asked, already dreading the answer. "There's been a complaint," Mr. Jenkins said, his voice tight with frustration. "A serious one. A customer from the VIP room claims they were treated unfairly by the staff, specifically you." Maria's stomach dropped. She had no idea what this customer was talking about. She had done everything by the book, hadn't she? But before she could say anything, Mr. Jenkins cut her off. "I don't want to hear excuses. I've already spoken with the owner, and this could cost us a major contract with one of our biggest investors. We need to handle this carefully." Maria felt her pulse quicken. She was on the verge of losing her job. She had always worked so hard to prove herself, to make sure she didn't let her past define her. But now it felt like everything was slipping through her fingers. "This is ridiculous," Maria said, her voice low but firm. "I didn't do anything wrong." Mr. Jenkins glared at her. "I don't care about your excuses. Just make sure you smooth things over. I need this handled." Maria was about to respond when she remembered Kim. She couldn't just let this situation drag her down. She had been given a glimpse of something bigger, of possibility, of change, and she wasn't about to let it slip away. "I'll fix it," Maria said, her voice steady despite the panic swirling inside her. She had no idea how, but she was determined to make it right. As she walked back to the dining area, Maria took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. She had always been the one who cleaned up the messes, always the one who put others first. But tonight, she realized something. It was her turn to stand up for herself. When she returned to Kim's table, she found the celebrity still sitting there, lost in thought. But when Kim looked up at Maria, there was something different in her eyes, a spark of hope. "I'm sorry," Maria began, her voice firm. "I'll make sure everything is okay." Kim smiled gently, her expression filled with understanding. "You've got this, Maria. I believe in you." For the first time in a long while, Maria felt a sense of confidence she hadn't known she was capable of. Maybe, just maybe, things were starting to change. Maria took a deep breath as she walked back to the staff room, her thoughts a whirlpool of confusion. The night had taken an unexpected turn. The pressure from Mr. Jenkins, the unsettling complaint from the VIP customer, and Kim's vulnerable words still echoed in her mind. It felt like everything was falling apart at once, but somehow, Maria was still standing. She didn't know for how much longer, though. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text from Jane. "Maria, I've got your back. Let me know what happens. We're a team." The message was a small comfort, but it wasn't enough to calm her nerves. She felt alone, even with the support of her friends. She was facing a challenge unlike anything she had encountered before, and the stakes felt higher than ever. When Maria stepped back into the dining room, the weight of it all seemed to press in on her again. The restaurant was nearly empty now, save for a few stragglers lingering over their last drinks. She could feel the tension in the air, the lingering unease from earlier in the night. She still hadn't sorted out what had happened with the VIP complaint, and the night was winding down, but the storm in her mind raged on. She noticed Kim sitting alone at her table, staring down at the half-empty glass of wine in front of her. There was a heaviness in her posture, something Maria had never seen in a confident celebrity before. This time, it wasn't just the pressure of the spotlight, it was something deeper, something far more personal. Maria took a tentative step toward the table, unsure of what to say, but her heart felt compelled to reach out. She couldn't help but wonder if Kim was feeling just as lost as she was. "Are you okay?" Maria asked softly, her voice barely above a whisper. Kim looked up at her, her eyes red-rimmed as though she hadn't been sleeping well. She didn't speak right away, just sat there, staring at Maria with a quiet vulnerability that was rare to see in someone who lived their life in the public eye. "I'm fine," Kim said, though her voice cracked. She quickly wiped a stray tear from the corner of her eye. She paused, as if searching for the right words. "I don't know what I'm doing anymore. All these years of trying to be perfect, trying to be what everyone wants me to be, and I've lost sight of who I really am. I'm exhausted, Maria. I don't know how to keep going." Maria's heart broke for her. She had always admired Kim from afar, her beauty, her business savvy, her confidence. But now, in this raw moment of honesty, Maria saw a side of Kim that no one had ever seen. It was a reminder that, no matter how much someone appeared to have it all together on the outside, they could still be struggling on the inside. Maria took a deep breath, walking over to the table and sitting down next to her. "You don't have to have it all figured out," Maria said quietly. You just need to take things one step at a time. Kim turned her head slowly to look at Maria, her eyes full of confusion. How can you say that? You've got it all together. You've got your life in control, your family, your job. Maria shook her head, cutting her off. I don't, she said firmly. I'm just trying to get by, like everyone else. We all have our struggles, Kim. I'm no different from you. Kim's lips trembled slightly, and she seemed to weigh Maria's words carefully. Finally, she spoke again. But I don't know what to do anymore. I've spent my entire life building this persona, this brand, and now. I don't even know who I am behind it all. Maria's mind raced. She had been there, feeling like she was losing herself in the pressure of everyone else's expectations. She had worked so hard to fit into a mold that wasn't hers, and now, like Kim, she found herself standing on the edge of something new. I think maybe we're both asking ourselves the same question, Maria said, her voice steady with a sense of quiet resolve. Who are we, really? What do we want for ourselves? Because right now, it's easy to let other people dictate who we should be, but at some point, we have to choose for ourselves. Kim looked at her, her expression softening. There was a flicker of recognition in her eyes, as if Maria's words had unlocked something within her. Maybe you're right, Kim murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. Maybe it's time I stop living for everyone else. Maria smiled gently, but her heart was heavy. It wasn't going to be easy for either of them. The road ahead was uncertain, filled with challenges they couldn't predict, but for the first time, Maria felt like she wasn't alone in the struggle. The two women sat in silence for a moment, sharing an unspoken understanding. They were both at a crossroads, two women, from different worlds, but facing the same battle to find themselves in a world that constantly told them who they should be. Just as Maria was about to say something else, her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a call from Mr. Jenkins. Maria didn't want to answer, but she knew she had no choice. Taking a deep breath, she stepped away from Kim's table, her heart pounding in her chest. Hello, she answered, her voice calm despite the rising anxiety in her chest. Maria, we need to talk, Mr. Jenkins' voice crackled through the line. The complaint, it's serious. The owner is here, and he wants to meet with you. Maria's stomach twisted in knots. This was it, the moment she had been dreading. She had no idea how she was going to get through this, but something inside her had shifted. The fear wasn't as paralyzing anymore. She had found a quiet strength, something she hadn't realized she possessed. I'll be right there, Maria said, her voice steady. When she hung up, she turned back to Kim, who was watching her with a knowing look. Go take care of it, Kim said softly, her eyes filled with something resembling hope. You've got this. Maria nodded, feeling a renewed sense of determination. She wasn't just fighting for her job anymore. She was fighting for herself, fighting to reclaim who she was and who she wanted to be. Maria's heart pounded as she walked toward the back office, her mind racing with the potential consequences of the complaint. She had faced angry customers before, but this felt different. She wasn't just defending her job, she was defending herself. The weight of the situation bore down on her, but something deep inside her had shifted. She wasn't the same woman who had walked into this restaurant months ago. As she reached the office door, she paused, taking a deep breath to steady herself. The sharp voices of Mr. Jenkins and the owner filtered through the thin walls, their conversation growing more heated by the second. Maria knew that her fate, and perhaps the restaurant's reputation, hung in the balance. She knocked, and the door swung open almost immediately. Mr. Jenkins looked up, his expression hard and unforgiving. The owner, a tall, middle-aged man with a stern face, sat behind the desk, eyeing her with a calculating look. Maria, come in, the owner said coldly, gesturing to the chair across from him. Maria stepped inside, closing the door behind her. She stood tall, determined not to show any sign of weakness. This was it, the moment that would decide her future at the restaurant. "I understand there was a complaint made against you," the owner began, his voice low and formal. "A serious one. One that could cost us a major client." Maria nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. "I don't know what happened, but I can assure you that I did nothing wrong. I did my job as I always do. I treated every guest with respect, and I followed protocol." The owner raised an eyebrow. "I've seen the reports. It seems you were involved in a confrontation with a VIP guest. This is not the kind of behavior we tolerate here." Maria clenched her fists, trying to remain calm. "I wasn't involved in a confrontation," she said, her voice steady. "I tried to defuse the situation. I'm sorry if there was any misunderstanding, but I've been nothing but professional." Mr. Jenkins sat silently, his arms crossed. Maria could tell he was waiting for the moment when the blame would fall on her. But she wasn't going to let that happen. The owner leaned forward, his gaze unwavering. "Maria, I don't doubt your sincerity. But we have a reputation to uphold. One mistake, one bad review, and we could lose everything. Do you understand that?" Maria's heart raced, but she didn't look away. She had worked too hard for this job, for this moment. She wasn't going to let it slip away without a fight. "I understand," Maria said quietly. "But I also understand that sometimes people make mistakes. I don't deserve to lose my job over something that wasn't my fault." The silence in the room was thick, and for a moment, Maria thought she might lose everything. But then the owner sighed, leaning back in his chair. "I'll tell you what, Maria," he said, his tone softer now. "I've spoken with the client, and they've agreed to settle this issue privately. The matter is closed for now. But I want you to understand this, we can't afford another incident like this. Not with the stakes this high." Maria let out a breath she didn't even realize she was holding. Relief flooded through her, but she knew she couldn't let her guard down yet. "I understand. Thank you for giving me a chance," Maria said, her voice firm. The owner gave her a slight nod. "Make sure it doesn't happen again. You're on thin ice, Maria. We'll be watching." Maria nodded, her resolve hardening. She wasn't going to let anyone push her around anymore, not Mr. Jenkins, not the owner, and certainly not herself. As she left the office, Maria felt the weight of the world lift off her shoulders. It wasn't over yet, but she had survived. And in that moment, she knew something had changed within her. She wasn't the woman who had walked into this job full of doubt and fear. She was stronger now, more confident in her own voice. When she stepped back into the restaurant, she found Kim still sitting at her table, patiently waiting. Maria walked over to her, the look of relief on her face evident. "Maria!" Kim exclaimed when she saw her. "What happened? Are you okay?" Maria smiled, the stress of the meeting still lingering but fading fast. "I'm okay. Everything's fine now." Kim raised an eyebrow. "Really? You look like you just won a battle." Maria chuckled softly. "In a way, I did. But it wasn't just about this job. It was about standing up for myself, for what I believe in." Kim's eyes softened with understanding. "I get it. I'm proud of you, Maria. You didn't back down." Maria's smile widened, the weight of the evening finally beginning to lift. "Thank you. Honestly, I don't think I could have done it without that conversation we had earlier. You made me realize something important." Kim tilted her head, curious. "What's that?" Maria took a deep breath, feeling the surge of confidence that had taken root inside her. "That it's okay to not have everything figured out. And that I don't have to let anyone else tell me who I should be." Kim smiled warmly. "I think we both needed that reminder." Maria sat down across from Kim, feeling a newfound sense of clarity. The road ahead wasn't going to be easy, but she was no longer afraid of the unknown. She had found her voice, and that was the first step toward finding herself. As they sat there in the quiet restaurant, Maria felt a surge of hope she hadn't known was possible. Life was unpredictable, full of ups and downs, but for the first time in a long time, she knew she was ready for whatever came next. And as the evening drew to a close, Maria realized that sometimes, the hardest battles lead to the greatest victories. The days following the meeting with the owner were a blur. Maria had expected the tension to hang over her like a dark cloud, but surprisingly, it didn't. In fact, something had shifted inside her. She walked through the restaurant with a renewed sense of purpose, her steps more confident than ever before. The weight of fear and doubt that had once haunted her seemed lighter, like a burden she no longer needed to carry. Maria was no longer just a waitress trying to get by. She was a woman who had found her voice, and she wasn't about to lose it. It was a Wednesday afternoon, and the restaurant was quiet. The lull between lunch and dinner service gave Maria some much-needed time to reflect. She sat in the staff room, going over her notes for the next week's schedule, when her phone buzzed with a message from Kim. "Hey, I've been thinking a lot about what you said. Let's talk soon. I think you're onto something big." Maria's heart fluttered. She hadn't expected this message, but she was glad to hear it. After their conversation the other night, she had felt a bond forming between them, something deeper than just a casual connection between a celebrity and a waitress. Maria felt like she and Kim were on the same wavelength, both searching for something more than what life had handed them. A few minutes later, Maria saw Kim walk through the front door of the restaurant. She was dressed casually, wearing a simple t-shirt and jeans, but even in this understated outfit, her presence filled the room. Maria smiled and waved her over, and Kim returned the gesture with a warm grin. "Hey there," Kim said as she slid into the booth across from Maria. "You look different today. Like, lighter. Happier." Maria chuckled softly. "I feel different. A lot has changed in the past few days." Kim raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. "Like what? You've got me curious now." Maria took a deep breath, feeling the excitement build within her as she spoke. "I've been thinking a lot about the conversation we had. About finding my voice, about not letting fear dictate my choices anymore. I've realized I've been stuck for too long, playing it safe. And that's not who I want to be anymore." Kim nodded, her eyes wide with understanding. "I get it. I've been there too. I've spent so much time trying to fit into a mold that wasn't mine. But now, I'm ready to start something new. Something real. I think we're both on the verge of something big." Maria's heart skipped a beat. Kim had always been the one people looked up to, the one with the perfect life, the successful brand, the fame and fortune. But now, Maria saw a new side of Kim, a side that was searching for something beyond all of that. "What are you thinking?" Maria asked, her voice filled with curiosity. Kim leaned in, her tone serious but excited. "I've been toying with the idea of starting something different. Something that's not just about the fame, but about making a real impact. I'm thinking of starting a project that gives people like us, people who felt overlooked or undervalued, a chance to tell their stories. To empower them." Maria's eyes widened. She could feel the weight of Kim's words. This wasn't just a casual idea, it was a vision, a movement waiting to happen. "That sounds incredible," Maria said, her voice full of awe. "But where do we start?" Kim smiled, a twinkle of excitement in her eyes. "That's where you come in." Maria blinked, surprised. "Me? What do you mean?" "I need someone who understands what it's like to be on the other side. Someone who knows what it feels like to be underestimated. Someone like you, Maria," Kim said, her voice warm with sincerity. "I think together, we could build something that's real. Something that actually makes a difference." Maria felt a wave of emotion rush over her, fear, excitement, doubt, but beneath it all was something stronger, hope. This was the opportunity she had been waiting for. The chance to step out of the shadows and into something bigger, something that mattered. "Are you sure I'm the right person for this?" Maria asked, her voice thick with uncertainty. Kim reached across the table, placing her hand gently on Maria's. "I'm sure. You've got the heart for it. You've got the drive. And you've got the courage to take risks, even when you're scared. That's exactly what we need." Maria smiled, her heart swelling with gratitude. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she had a purpose beyond just surviving day to day. She had always dreamed of doing something meaningful, but she had never known how to take that first step. Now, she was being offered a chance to change everything. "I'm in," Maria said without hesitation. "Let's do this." Kim's eyes lit up, a smile spreading across her face. "I knew you'd say that. We're going to change the world, Maria. Together." As the conversation continued, Maria felt a sense of excitement and clarity settle in her chest. She had spent years trying to fit into a life that wasn't hers. Now, she was finally ready to carve out her own path, one that was true to who she was. And for the first time, she didn't feel alone. Kim was right, they were on the verge of something big. But Maria knew that the most important thing was that they were both ready to take the leap. They were ready to stop living for other people's expectations and start living for themselves. Later that evening, as Maria stood behind the bar, the quiet hum of the restaurant filling the air, she took a deep breath, letting it out slowly. She wasn't just a waitress anymore. She was someone with a future that was in her hands, and she wasn't going to let anyone take it away. For the first time in a long time, Maria felt free. The idea had been born, but now the real work began. Maria and Kim spent the next few days working tirelessly, laying the foundation for their new project. It wasn't easy. Every step forward seemed to bring new hurdles. They needed funding, a space to work, and, most importantly, a clear vision of what they were trying to achieve. Maria had never been involved in anything like this before, and while the excitement of the opportunity fueled her, there was also a growing sense of uncertainty. Could they really pull this off? They began by brainstorming, coming up with a mission statement for the project. Kim had a clear idea of what she wanted, a platform for people to share their untold stories, particularly women and people of color who had been overlooked by mainstream media. Maria was on board with this vision immediately. It resonated deeply with her own experiences, both as a waitress and as a woman in a world that often didn't take her seriously. Over the course of several days, they worked through the nitty-gritty details. Maria helped Kim with the logistical side of things, coordinating meetings with potential investors, researching local venues for their launch event, and even getting in touch with some influencers who might help promote their mission. But there were moments when doubt crept in. One evening, after a long day of running around town, Maria sat at a coffee shop with Kim, her head spinning from all the work they had to do. Kim was animated as always, but Maria couldn't help but feel the weight of the task ahead. "What if we can't make this happen?" Maria asked, her voice quieter than usual. "What if it's too much, too fast? What if we fail?" Kim paused, looking at her intently. "Maria, we're going to fail. We're going to face setbacks, things aren't going to go as planned. But that doesn't mean we're giving up. We'll learn from those failures, and we'll get stronger." Maria looked down at her coffee, her fingers tracing the edge of the cup. She had always been afraid of failure, had always been terrified of not living up to expectations. She was used to being overlooked, to feeling like she didn't belong. But now she was being asked to step into a role that felt almost too big for her. Kim continued, her voice gentle but resolute. "I get it. I've been there too. There were days when I felt like I was faking it, like I didn't belong in the rooms I was in. But you know what? I stayed. I pushed through. And now, I'm here." Maria nodded slowly, her heart swelling with a mix of gratitude and fear. "Okay. I'll stay. I'm ready to do whatever it takes. And with that, they forged ahead, pushing forward through the exhaustion and uncertainty. They secured a venue for the launch event, a small, intimate gallery that had agreed to host them for a discounted rate, thanks to Kim's name. The buzz surrounding the event began to grow. As more people got involved, the excitement was contagious. But even with everything moving forward, Maria still had moments of doubt. She had been to countless events, seen the glitz and glam, the polished social media posts, and the success stories. But what if this was just another fleeting dream? What if the project didn't resonate with the people they were hoping to help? The day of the launch arrived, and Maria found herself standing in front of the gallery, feeling the familiar rush of nerves. The space was packed with people, all buzzing with excitement, all eager to see what Kim Kardashian's new venture was all about. Maria had to admit, it was impressive. The room looked beautiful, the lighting perfect, and the crowd full of influential people. But as she took it all in, she couldn't help but wonder if she truly belonged here. Kim found her standing by the entrance, her expression thoughtful. She walked over, her smile wide. "Are you okay?" Kim asked, her voice soft. Maria smiled back, but it didn't reach her eyes. I don't know. I thought I'd be more excited, but I feel overwhelmed. What if this doesn't work? What if I mess it all up?" Kim placed a hand on her shoulder, grounding her. "You're not here alone. You're part of this because you're meant to be. Don't let fear stop you now." Maria nodded, taking a deep breath. As the crowd grew louder, she realized that this wasn't just about the launch event or the people in the room. This was about the bigger picture, about making a difference, about telling stories that mattered, and about giving people who felt invisible a voice. Kim gave her a wink before heading toward the stage, where she would address the crowd. Maria watched as her friend took the microphone, her confidence shining through. "Thank you all for being here tonight," Kim began, her voice smooth and warm. "This is just the beginning of something incredible. We've created this platform to give people the chance to share their stories, their truths, and their experiences. It's time for everyone to have a seat at the table." The crowd clapped, but Maria wasn't looking at them. She was focused on Kim, watching as the woman she had admired for so long spoke with conviction and passion. In that moment, Maria knew that they were doing something important. The nerves, the doubt, they didn't matter anymore. What mattered was that they were here, together, doing something real. When the speech ended, the crowd was filled with energy. Maria joined Kim on stage, and together, they unveiled the details of the project. There was a sense of magic in the air, a feeling that something big was about to happen. People were already signing up to contribute their stories, and the social media buzz was undeniable. Maria had stepped into this role unsure of herself, but now, as the evening came to a close, she couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. This wasn't just Kim's dream. This was hers too. And as the event wrapped up and the last guests trickled out, Maria and Kim stood outside the gallery, looking up at the stars above. "Do you think this is really happening?" Maria asked, her voice full of awe. Kim smiled, her eyes sparkling. "It's happening, Maria. And it's just the beginning." As they walked away from the gallery, Maria felt the weight of the world fall off her shoulders. She wasn't just standing by anymore, she was part of something bigger. She was no longer the person who stood in the background, watching from the sidelines. She was finally living her own story. The days following the launch event were a whirlwind of activity. What had started as an idea over coffee had quickly turned into a movement, and the responses poured in from all directions. People from all over the country were reaching out, eager to share their stories, their experiences, and their struggles. Maria couldn't believe the sheer volume of messages, emails, and posts that were coming in, so many people, so many voices, each with their own journey. But with the attention came the challenges. Maria and Kim found themselves managing the growing platform, trying to juggle the influx of stories while making sure they stayed true to their original vision. They had built a team to help with logistics, outreach, and content management, but it was clear that the pressure was beginning to mount. One morning, Maria sat at her kitchen table, her laptop open in front of her, as she sifted through a pile of submissions. Some were inspiring, some heartbreaking, but all of them felt like a weight on her shoulders. She had always been the one to listen, the one to care for others, but now, she felt responsible for these voices, these stories that had been entrusted to her. How do we keep up with all of this? She muttered to herself, rubbing her temples. How do we make sure every story gets the attention it deserves without burning out? Her phone buzzed, breaking her out of her thoughts. It was Kim. Hey, can you meet me at the office later today? We need to talk about the next steps. Things are moving fast. Maria sighed and typed back a quick response. I'll be there. I'm feeling overwhelmed, though. I don't know how we can manage all of this. We'll figure it out together. See you soon. As Maria headed to the office later that day, she couldn't shake the feeling that the pressure was starting to crack her composure. She had always prided herself on being able to handle tough situations, but now she found herself questioning whether she was truly ready for this. The responsibility felt heavier with every passing day. When she arrived at the office, she found Kim already there, pacing around as usual, her energy infectious but tinged with concern. I'm glad you're here, Kim said, glancing up. I've been thinking a lot about how we're going to move forward. We have so many people involved now, so many stories. It's amazing, but also, overwhelming. Maria nodded, feeling the same sense of exhaustion settling in her bones. I get it. I'm starting to feel like we're in over our heads. It's like we're trying to keep up with a train that's moving faster than we can run. Kim stopped pacing and turned to face her. I know. But we knew it wouldn't be easy. We're doing something important here, and sometimes, that means we have to push through the tough moments. Maria bit her lip, looking down at her hands. But what if we can't? What if we mess this up? Kim walked over and placed a hand on Maria's shoulder, her tone soft but firm. Listen, we won't get everything right. We're going to make mistakes. But we can't let that stop us. What matters is that we keep moving forward. We keep pushing for what's right. Maria looked up, meeting Kim's eyes. For the first time, she saw the vulnerability behind Kim's confident exterior. She wasn't just the celebrity with all the answers. She was a person, just like Maria, who had doubts and fears. Maria took a deep breath and nodded. You're right. We can't stop now. We've come too far. Over the next few weeks, Maria and Kim worked tirelessly to streamline their operations. They set up better systems for managing the influx of submissions and started recruiting more volunteers to help with outreach. Kim's celebrity status helped bring in more supporters, while Maria's background as a waitress helped her connect with everyday people, those who had been overlooked in society for far too long. Together, they made a powerful team. But the challenges didn't stop. They faced a backlash from some who felt that the platform was being overrun with too many voices, too many opinions. Critics accused them of diluting the message, of trying to be too inclusive at the expense of focus. The pressure mounted even more, and it wasn't just the critics they had to worry about, it was the people who had trusted them to give their stories a voice. One afternoon, as they sat in the office reading through some of the negative feedback, Maria couldn't keep her frustration in check. This isn't what we set out to do, she said, her voice thick with emotion. We wanted to give people a space to share their truths. And now we're being accused of not doing enough. Kim sat across from her, her eyes narrowed in thought. I get it. But sometimes, when you try to do something new, you're going to face opposition. You can't please everyone. Maria ran her hands through her hair, feeling the weight of the criticism settle heavily on her shoulders. I just want to do it right. I want to honor these people, their stories. I don't want to let anyone down. Kim stood and walked over to Maria, placing a hand on her back. You're not letting anyone down. You're doing something that's never been done before. And that's going to make waves, even if some people don't understand it yet. Maria took a deep breath, feeling Kim's words sink in. It was true, this project wasn't just about them. It was about the people they were giving a voice to, the stories that had been ignored for far too long. And if they were going to make a real difference, they had to push through the challenges, no matter how tough it got. I'm not giving up, Maria said, her voice steady. I'm going to keep going. We're going to make this work. Kim smiled, her eyes full of admiration. That's the spirit, Maria. We've come too far to stop now. As the days turned into weeks, Maria and Kim's partnership continued to grow stronger. They faced setbacks, of course, but with each challenge, they learned and adapted. The platform was still evolving, but one thing was certain, they were on the right path. And no matter what, they would keep fighting for the people whose stories deserved to be heard. Maria may have been feeling the weight of responsibility, but she was no longer afraid to carry it. Maria sat alone in her apartment, the glow of the streetlights filtering through the blinds. The soft hum of the city outside seemed to mirror the chaos swirling in her mind. She had just finished another long day at the office, where Kim had been pushing full speed ahead with their new project. They had launched a new initiative, hoping to bring even more voices to the platform, and the response had been overwhelming. The messages, the comments, the never-ending list of things to do, it was all becoming too much to process. But there was something more weighing on Maria's heart tonight. She looked down at her phone, the screen lighting up with a series of texts from her mom. She hadn't spoken to her in days, too wrapped up in everything to return her calls or messages. Maria's mother had always been there for her, through thick and thin, and now, it seemed like Maria was letting the distance grow between them. Maria's fingers hovered over the screen, but she didn't immediately respond. Her mind kept drifting to the events of the past few weeks. It had all happened so quickly, and now the project was growing in ways she hadn't anticipated. Kim was more than just a friend, she was a mentor, a force of nature. Maria had always looked up to her, but now, she was starting to wonder if she was losing herself in the process. The long hours, the never-ending decisions, the constant rush to keep up, it was starting to take a toll. She was giving so much of herself to the platform, to the people who depended on her and Kim, but in doing so, she was starting to lose touch with the things that used to matter. Her friends from back home had reached out too, but she hadn't had the time to connect with them. They didn't understand what she was doing, didn't know the depth of the responsibility she now carried. Maria had always been the girl who would grab coffee with them on a Saturday morning, the one who would show up at birthday parties and family gatherings, the one who listened when they needed advice. Now, she felt like a stranger in her own life. With a sigh, Maria sent a quick text to her mom. Hey, sorry I've been out of touch. I've been really busy with work. I'll call you tomorrow, promise. She hit send and leaned back against the couch, rubbing her temples. There was a dull ache building behind her eyes. The pressure, the expectations, the feeling that everyone was looking to her for answers, it was all too much. The project had started as something exciting, something that felt like a way to finally make a real difference. But now, as it expanded, Maria felt like she was losing her grip. It wasn't just the work, it was everything. She felt stretched thin, like she was trying to juggle too many things at once, and sooner or later, something was going to slip. Her phone buzzed again, this time with a message from Kim. I've been thinking about you. You good? Maria stared at the message for a long time. She hadn't told Kim how much she was struggling, how overwhelmed she was with everything. She didn't want to seem weak, didn't want to admit that maybe she wasn't cut out for this, that maybe she had taken on more than she could handle. But Kim had always been so intuitive, so understanding. I'm fine, just tired. Things are moving fast, but I'm hanging in there. The reply came almost immediately. don't overdo it. Remember, this is a marathon, not a sprint. We're in this together, okay? Maria smiled a little at Kim's words. She always seemed to know just what to say. But the truth was, Maria wasn't sure how much longer she could keep running at this pace. She was losing her balance, losing her connection to the things that mattered to her, the people she loved. And then it hit her. Maybe it wasn't just about the work or the project. Maybe it was about her own sense of self, about rediscovering who she was outside of the platform, outside of the expectations she had placed on herself and the ones that had been placed on her by others. She needed to find a way to reconnect with the parts of herself that she had pushed aside in the pursuit of something bigger. The next morning, Maria found herself standing in front of the mirror, looking at the woman who had come so far. She barely recognized herself anymore. She looked different, tired. But there was something else too, something she hadn't noticed before. There was strength in her eyes, a quiet determination that wasn't there before. She wasn't the same person she had been when this journey started, but that didn't mean she had to lose who she was either. After taking a deep breath, Maria made a decision. She called her mom. The phone rang, and after a few moments, her mother picked up. Maria, her mom's voice was warm and familiar, and the weight that Maria had been carrying seemed to lighten just a little. "Hey, Mom," Maria said, her voice cracking slightly. "I'm sorry I've been distant. I've just been caught up with everything." Her mother's voice softened. "I know, honey. I just want you to be okay. You don't have to do it all alone." Maria's heart ached. She hadn't realized how much she needed to hear those words. "I know, Mom. I don't know how to balance it all." Her mother was silent for a moment, and then she spoke with a quiet wisdom that only a mother could offer. "You don't have to do it all at once. Take things one step at a time. Don't lose yourself in the process, okay?" Maria closed her eyes, allowing the tears she had been holding back to fall. "Okay, Mom. I won't. I just need to figure out how." Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Maria spent the next few days following her conversation with her mom, taking small steps to reclaim her balance. It wasn't easy. Old habits die hard, and for months, she had been so focused on the project, so dedicated to the cause, that she had forgotten how to put herself first. But she was determined to make changes. She started with simple things. That Saturday morning, she took a walk in the park, a luxury she hadn't allowed herself in far too long. The crisp air filled her lungs, and for the first time in weeks, Maria allowed herself to simply breathe. No phone buzzing in her pocket, no emails demanding attention. Just the sound of birds chirping and the gentle rustle of leaves in the wind. She even made plans to meet up with her friends that evening, something she hadn't done in forever. They had been understanding about her absence, but Maria could feel the distance growing between them, and she didn't want that to continue. So, she texted her best friend, Jenna. "Hey, want to grab dinner tonight? It's been too long." Jenna's reply came almost immediately. "I'm so glad you reached out. Let's do it. I miss you." Dinner that night was a breath of fresh air. Maria and Jenna caught up like no time had passed, laughing over old inside jokes and sharing the latest updates on their lives. Maria felt a sense of normalcy that had been missing for months. It felt good to reconnect with someone who knew her long before the whirlwind of the project had taken over. As the week went on, Maria made more time for herself, attending family gatherings, going to the gym for short workouts, and even indulging in a long, quiet afternoon at a local coffee shop. She made sure to answer texts from her mom and had even started planning a visit home for the weekend. And with each small step she took to balance her life, something unexpected happened. She began to feel more focused at work, more energized. She found herself approaching the project with renewed creativity, coming up with fresh ideas for outreach and engagement. It was as if the weight she had been carrying had lightened, and in turn, her ability to think clearly and act decisively had been restored. Maria's renewed sense of self didn't go unnoticed by Kim. One afternoon, as they sat in the office going over the latest metrics from their platform's launch, Kim leaned back in her chair and smiled. "You've got a new glow about you," Kim said, her eyes twinkling with a mix of curiosity and admiration. "What's going on?" Maria laughed, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. "Honestly, I've just been taking time for myself. Reconnecting with friends, spending time with family, you know, the things I've been neglecting." Kim raised an eyebrow. "That's amazing. You look different. More confident. More like yourself." Maria smiled. "I think I needed to remember who I was before all of this took over. I've been so focused on the project that I forgot I needed to be whole to give my best. It's funny how when you make time for yourself, everything else starts to fall into place." Kim nodded thoughtfully. "You're right. It's easy to get lost in the work, especially when you're so passionate about it. But we can't pour from an empty cup. Taking care of yourself is just as important as taking care of the project." Maria felt a wave of gratitude toward Kim. She had always been the driving force behind the project, but now, it felt like Maria had found her footing, too. She wasn't just along for the ride anymore, she was actively shaping the direction they were going in. As the days passed, Maria's confidence continued to grow. She found herself stepping up more in meetings, offering suggestions and ideas that were met with enthusiasm. She wasn't afraid to take the lead when it was needed, and she found herself more at peace with her role in the project. One afternoon, as Maria and Kim were discussing the future of their platform, Kim turned to her and said something that made Maria's heart swell with pride. "You know, Maria, I've always believed in you. But now, I'm seeing a side of you I didn't expect. You've really grown into this role. You're not just helping to lead this project, you're changing the game." Maria felt a surge of emotion. She had worked so hard, and to hear Kim say that, it was more than she could have hoped for. She had found a way to balance her life, her purpose, and her relationships, and in doing so, she had unlocked a deeper level of success than she had ever imagined. The project was still growing, still evolving, and the road ahead was full of challenges. But Maria was no longer afraid of them. She had learned the hard way that taking care of herself was the key to making everything else work. And with that realization, she was ready for whatever came next. As she walked home that evening, Maria looked up at the stars, feeling a sense of peace she hadn't felt in months. She was no longer lost in the whirlwind of expectations and responsibility. She was grounded, stronger than ever, and ready to continue fighting for what she believed in. And for the first time in a long time, she felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be. It had been a typical morning when Maria received the email that would change everything. She sat in the corner of the coffee shop, sipping her latte, scrolling through the latest updates on the project. Things had been going well, the platform's user base was growing, the team was in sync, and she was finally feeling in control. But as she opened the email, her heart skipped a beat. Subject: urgent, crisis in user engagement. The message was short, but its impact was immediate. One of their most high-profile campaigns had completely backfired. The engagement numbers were dismal, and there was a wave of negative feedback flooding in. What was supposed to be a high-impact initiative had become a PR nightmare. The email included screenshots of angry comments, requests for refunds, and a trending hashtag calling out the platform for being out of touch. Maria stared at the screen, her pulse quickening. She felt the familiar tightening in her chest, the same sensation she had experienced months ago, when everything was still new and overwhelming. For a moment, she wondered if she had made a mistake in taking on this responsibility. Could she handle it all? Her phone buzzed on the table, and she glanced at it. It was Kim. "Call me. We need to talk about this." Maria took a deep breath, her fingers hovering over the screen. She didn't feel ready for this conversation. She hadn't even processed everything in the email yet, and now she was expected to come up with a solution. Kim had always been the one to handle the big picture, to navigate the high-stakes decisions. But now, the weight of the crisis was on Maria's shoulders. She pressed the call button, and within moments, Kim's voice filled her ear. "Maria," Kim said, her tone steady but urgent. "I saw the numbers." "What happened?" Maria's mind raced as she tried to put the situation into words. "I don't know, we did everything we could, Kim." The messaging was on point, but somehow it just missed the mark. "The backlash is huge." Kim's voice softened, but there was still a sharpness to it. "This is part of the business, Maria. We're going to face challenges like this. What matters is how we respond. We can't let this derail everything we've worked for." Maria's throat tightened. "I know. But what if we can't recover from this? What if we've lost the trust of our audience?" Kim's silence on the other end of the line was almost more than Maria could bear. Finally, she spoke. "You're the one who's been running this campaign. You know it better than anyone. What do you think needs to be done?" Maria closed her eyes for a moment, gathering her thoughts. She hadn't realized it before, but in the past few weeks, she had grown. She had learned to trust her instincts, to listen to her own voice. She had gained the confidence to lead, but now, in this moment of crisis, it felt like everything she had built could crumble with a single misstep. "I think we need to own up to the mistake," Maria said, her voice gaining strength. "We need to address the concerns head-on, apologize, and show that we're listening. And we need to make real changes to fix the issues. It's not going to be easy, but if we can show our audience that we're taking responsibility, we can regain their trust." Kim was quiet for a long moment, and Maria could almost hear the wheels turning in her mind. "You're right," Kim said finally. "This isn't about perfection, it's about how we handle the mess when things go wrong. You've got a clear plan. Let's move forward with it. I'll help however I can, but this is your show now, Maria." Maria felt a wave of emotion rush over her. Kim was putting her trust in her, completely. It was a huge moment for her, and the weight of it was heavy. But for the first time, she felt capable. She wasn't going to let the project fall apart. She would rise to the occasion. After the call, Maria immediately called an emergency team meeting. They needed to move fast. She outlined her plan to the group, and though there was anxiety in the room, there was also a renewed sense of purpose. Everyone was behind her. The next few days were a blur of non-stop meetings, brainstorming sessions, and sleepless nights. Maria worked tirelessly with the team to create a public apology that felt genuine, not scripted. They crafted a message acknowledging the failure, expressing remorse, and outlining the steps they would take to make things right. It wasn't just about fixing the campaign, it was about restoring the connection with their audience. At one point, Maria found herself standing in front of a whiteboard, writing down the list of changes they needed to implement. It was a long list, and it felt daunting. But with each item she checked off, she felt a sense of accomplishment. She could do this. She had the skills, the vision, and the support. The day of the public apology came. Maria stood with Kim in front of a camera, ready to address their audience. The tension was palpable, but Maria took a deep breath and delivered her message with calm conviction. She spoke from the heart, telling their audience they had made a mistake, but they were committed to doing better. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. As the video was posted, the feedback began to roll in. Slowly but surely, people started to respond with messages of support. They appreciated the honesty, the accountability. It wasn't an instant fix, but it was a step in the right direction. By the end of the week, the numbers had started to improve. The damage had been significant, but Maria knew it wasn't irreversible. The project wasn't over. In fact, it had just entered a new phase. The days following the apology were a blur. The team had rallied together, the audience was forgiving, and the project was slowly regaining its momentum. Yet, as Maria sat at her desk late one night, staring at the glowing screen in front of her, a sense of exhaustion washed over her. The weight of the past few weeks seemed to settle on her shoulders all at once. Her phone buzzed on the table, and Maria instinctively glanced at it. It was a message from Jenna. "Hey, you free tomorrow? I miss you." Maria's fingers hovered over the keyboard. She had been so consumed with the project that her friends had become an afterthought. She hadn't seen Jenna in weeks, hadn't seen anyone, really. The thought of spending time with her friend felt like a distant memory, something she didn't have time for anymore. But Maria also realized that this was exactly the kind of thing she had been neglecting. And she knew, deep down, that something needed to change. "I'd love to. Let's do dinner. I'll text you tomorrow." Maria set the phone down and leaned back in her chair, rubbing her eyes. The project was going well, but something felt off. The pressure, the long hours, the constant need to stay ahead of the curve, it was starting to take its toll. Her relationships had suffered, and so had her personal well-being. Her body ached, her mind felt foggy, and her heart wasn't as light as it used to be. As she sat there, her thoughts drifted back to a conversation she'd had with her mother a few weeks ago. "You've been working so hard, Maria," her mom had said. "But what about you? When's the last time you did something just for you?" At the time, Maria had brushed it off. She didn't have time for such things. But now, sitting in the quiet of her office, she couldn't ignore the question anymore. What about her? When was the last time she did something just for herself? She had sacrificed so much of her life for the project, her time, her energy, her relationships. And while she was proud of what they had accomplished, Maria couldn't help but wonder if it had all come at too high a cost. The next day, as Maria met Jenna for dinner, she felt a weight lift off her shoulders. Being around her friend felt like a breath of fresh air. Jenna was a reminder of the life Maria had put on hold, of laughter, of easy conversations, of simple moments that didn't have to be so complicated. "I've missed this," Maria said as they sat down at the restaurant, the warm light from the chandeliers casting a soft glow on the table. "I didn't realize how much I needed it." Jenna smiled, her eyes kind. "I get it. The project's been all-consuming. But you can't forget about yourself in the process. You deserve to enjoy life too." Maria took a sip of her drink, her mind racing with thoughts. Jenna was right. She had been so consumed by the project that she had lost sight of the simple joys in life, the things that made her happy outside of work. And while the project was important, it wasn't everything. She didn't want to look back years from now and realize she had sacrificed her personal happiness for success. Later that night, after dinner, Maria took a walk through the city, the cool night air brushing against her skin. The streets were quieter now, the bustling energy of the day replaced by the calm stillness of the evening. She found herself reflecting on everything that had happened, how far she had come, how much she had learned, but also how much she had given up along the way. Her mind kept drifting back to a conversation she'd had with Kim just a few days ago. Kim had been the one to push Maria to take the lead, to take on more responsibility, and at the time, Maria had been eager to prove herself. But now, Maria wondered if she had taken on too much. She had given so much of herself to the project, but was it enough to justify the sacrifices she had made? By the time Maria returned home, she had made a decision. She needed to reevaluate her priorities. The project was important, yes. But her well-being, her relationships, and her sense of self were just as important. She realized that if she continued on the path she had been on, burning the candle at both ends, she would risk losing everything, her health, her happiness, and the very relationships that had once been her foundation. Maria sat down at her desk and opened her planner. She needed a new plan, a way to create balance between her personal life and the demands of the project. It wasn't going to be easy, and it would require discipline and self-awareness. But she was ready for it. She started by blocking out time for herself, time for family, friends, exercise, and rest. She scheduled regular check-ins with herself, to ensure she wasn't falling back into old habits. She would continue to work hard, but not at the expense of everything else. That night, as Maria lay in bed, she felt a sense of peace she hadn't experienced in weeks. She was finally beginning to see the bigger picture, what really mattered, what she was working for, and how she could live a life that was both successful and fulfilling. It wasn't about perfection. It was about finding harmony. And Maria was ready to find it. Maria stood at the entrance of the office, staring at the familiar glass doors that led to the world she had built over the past few months. She had been juggling the demands of the project with her newfound commitment to balance for a few weeks now, and though the progress felt slow, she was starting to see small, meaningful changes in her life. But today, something felt different. There was a palpable tension in the air, one that Maria couldn't quite shake off. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, pulling her out of her thoughts. It was Kim again. "Got a minute? We need to talk about the upcoming product launch. There's a huge potential partnership, and I need you on top of things. Can you handle it?" Maria read the message twice, her heart skipping a beat. She had worked hard to carve out space in her life for herself, to prioritize her well-being, but this partnership, was the kind of opportunity that could change everything for the company. It was exactly the kind of project she had been working toward. But was she ready to take on more? Maria thought back to the conversation she had with her mom, about finding time for herself and not losing sight of the things that truly mattered. She had promised herself she would stay grounded. Yet here she was, staring at an offer she couldn't refuse. She replied to Kim, "I'm on it. Let's talk when I get in." As she entered the office, the usual buzz of activity greeted her. Her team was working diligently, but there was an undercurrent of excitement. Maria could feel it in the air, everyone knew how much this partnership meant. Kim was counting on her, and the pressure was mounting. But now, more than ever, Maria knew she needed to approach it differently. She couldn't just dive in head first without considering the bigger picture. When she met with Kim in her office later that morning, the conversation began with a straightforward discussion about the launch. "Maria, this could be a game changer for us. The potential here is huge. I need your vision for how we approach this, how we make it stand out," Kim said, her voice intense but full of anticipation. Maria nodded, trying to keep her composure. "I've been thinking about it. But before we dive in, I want to make sure we're not overextending ourselves. We need to ensure that we're prepared for the demand this will create, both on the team and on the customers." Kim raised an eyebrow. "I see what you're saying. But this is the kind of opportunity we've been waiting for. We can't let it slip through our fingers." Maria felt a tightening in her chest. She knew Kim was right, this could propel the company forward in a way nothing else could. But she couldn't ignore the voice inside her telling her not to sacrifice everything again. "Look, I'm not saying we shouldn't take it," Maria replied, choosing her words carefully. "I just think we need to be smart about how we execute. I've been focusing on creating more balance in my life, and I want to make sure that the team isn't burning out in the process." Kim's expression softened. "I understand. I've seen the way you've been handling things lately. But this is a big moment, Maria. Are you ready to lead us through it?" Maria paused. This was the moment of truth. She had worked hard to get here, to find a sense of balance, but now she had to prove she could lead without losing herself in the process. She took a deep breath, centering herself. "I am ready," she said, her voice steady. "But I'm going to do this in a way that stays true to what I've been working toward. We can't sacrifice our values just because the stakes are high. I won't let the team burn out. We need a plan that balances the work with our well-being." Kim studied her for a moment before nodding. "Okay. I'm on board. Let's do this your way. But you'll have to move fast. The clock is ticking. As the meeting ended, Maria felt a surge of determination. She knew it wouldn't be easy, but she had made up her mind. This launch was important, but so was her peace of mind. She was going to lead this effort without compromising her values, and she would make sure her team was with her every step of the way. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of meetings, planning sessions, and strategic discussions. Maria worked closely with her team to ensure that every aspect of the launch was well thought out, not just for the company's success, but for the team's long-term sustainability. She built in regular check-ins, set clear boundaries around work hours, and emphasized the importance of taking breaks. For the first time in a while, Maria felt like she was managing both the pressure of the project and the needs of her team. But as the launch date neared, the stakes grew higher. There were moments when the pressure almost overwhelmed her. She had to balance the expectations of the executives with the realities of the team's workload. At times, she wondered if she could truly handle it all. One evening, just days before the launch, Maria found herself sitting in her office, staring at the final presentation. The project was ready. The team was ready. But she wasn't sure if she was ready. It was as though the weight of the world was resting on her shoulders. She reached for her phone and texted Jenna, "Need your advice. How do you stay grounded when everything feels like it's too much?" A few moments later, Jenna's reply came through, "You've got this. Just remember why you're doing it. Don't lose sight of what matters, your happiness, your health, the people who support you. Everything else is just noise." Maria read the message over and over, feeling a sense of calm wash over her. Jenna was right. In the end, it wasn't about perfection, it was about staying true to herself, no matter how big the challenge. With newfound clarity, Maria stood up, gathered her notes, and walked out of her office. The launch was coming. She was ready to face it head-on, with her values guiding her every step of the way. The days leading up to the product launch were a blur of last-minute tweaks, final rehearsals, and constant coordination. The team was working around the clock, and while Maria had managed to carve out time for herself, there was a growing sense of unease in the air. Despite her efforts to maintain balance, the pressure was starting to mount again. Every phone call, every meeting felt like it was adding to the weight on her shoulders. Maria sat at her desk, reviewing the final product details one last time. Her mind wandered to the countless hours spent preparing for this moment, how much she had sacrificed, how much her team had given. She wanted this to succeed so badly, not just for the company, but for herself, too. She needed to prove that she could handle it all, that she could lead without losing everything else in the process. Just as she was about to dive into another round of emails, her phone buzzed. It was Kim. "We have a major issue. The launch event venue just cancelled on us. We have less than 48 hours to find a new location, and we're running out of options. Call me ASAP." Maria's heart skipped a beat. Her mind raced, but she forced herself to remain calm. A cancelled venue was a disaster, and with only a day and a half to fix it, the situation felt impossible. She quickly dialed Kim. "Maria, this is bad," Kim's voice was laced with frustration. "We've been trying to reach every alternative venue, but no one has availability. The event is in less than 2 days, and we need a solution, now." Maria exhaled slowly, trying to steady her nerves. "Okay, let's think this through. Can we move the event online? We can leverage our digital platforms, and we've been getting great traction there." Kim hesitated. "I don't want to cancel the in-person experience. It's a huge part of the launch's success. We can't afford to lose that connection." Maria ran her fingers through her hair. It was moments like these that tested her leadership, the constant need to make decisions under pressure, balancing the impossible with the need for a perfect outcome. But there was no time to second-guess herself. They had to act fast. "All right, what if we move it to a smaller, more intimate venue? We'll scale it down, but we'll make it feel exclusive. We can still make a big impact without the usual fanfare. We just need to make it work, Maria suggested, trying to think on her feet. Kim paused before replying, the tension palpable. It's risky. But it might be the best option we have right now. Maria could hear the exhaustion in Kim's voice, and she knew the whole team was on edge. She also felt it, the strain of juggling every aspect of the launch, the relentless pressure to make it perfect. But now, more than ever, she realized that it wasn't about perfection. It was about finding a solution, about leading the team through uncertainty and making the best of a bad situation. We'll do it, Maria said with resolve. I'll handle the logistics. Get the team ready for a new plan. We'll make this work. As she hung up the phone, Maria took a deep breath, trying to calm the racing thoughts in her head. The challenge ahead felt insurmountable, but she had no choice but to face it. She wasn't just leading a team, she was leading herself through the chaos, proving that her resilience was stronger than any obstacle. Maria spent the rest of the afternoon scrambling, contacting venues, organizing transportation, and reworking the event schedule. It was a blur of phone calls and emails, but she was determined to stay in control. She could feel the pressure mounting again, but this time, something had shifted within her. She wasn't going to let the stress break her. She had come too far to let this moment defeat her. By the time the team reconvened that evening, Maria was exhausted, but she was also filled with a sense of purpose. She had secured a new venue, smaller, more intimate, but still capable of making an impact. She had restructured the schedule, made contingency plans, and ensured that everyone was on the same page. Kim walked into the room and immediately assessed the situation. You did it. You pulled it off. Maria smiled, a sense of relief flooding her. We did it. The team came together, and we're ready. Kim's eyes softened. I've seen you grow so much over the past few months. You're not just handling the pressure, you're leading us through it. And that's what makes you so valuable to this company. For a brief moment, Maria allowed herself to feel the weight of Kim's words. It was true, she had stepped up in ways she hadn't expected, and through it all, she had learned something crucial. Leadership wasn't just about managing the work, it was about navigating the chaos with grace and keeping the team united, no matter what came their way. As the evening wore on and the team began to unwind, Maria found herself reflecting on the day. The launch had seemed like an insurmountable challenge, but they had made it happen. The obstacles had only made her stronger, and for the first time in weeks, she felt like she was in control, not just of the project, but of her own life. She walked out of the office that night with a renewed sense of confidence. It wasn't about getting everything perfect. It was about being resilient, finding solutions, and staying true to her values, no matter how difficult the journey became. The launch was just around the corner, and Maria was ready to face it head-on. The countdown to the launch was down to hours. Maria could feel the energy in the air, tension mixed with excitement, as the final pieces of the event came together. The smaller venue had been secured, the schedules had been reworked, and the team was buzzing with anticipation. But as the evening of the launch approached, Maria found herself fighting an unexpected wave of nerves. She had worked tirelessly to ensure everything would go smoothly, but the weight of the responsibility had never felt heavier. She had successfully navigated a crisis when the venue had cancelled, but now, with the event only a few hours away, the reality of what she had achieved, and what still lay ahead, hit her hard. Maria stood at the back of the venue, watching the team make final adjustments. The space had transformed into something incredible. The lighting was perfect, the stage was set, and everything seemed to be falling into place. She felt a spark of pride. But there was still a nagging feeling in the pit of her stomach, a sense of urgency, a fear that despite all her hard work, something could go wrong. Kim approached her, a wide smile on her face. You did it. The team is ready, and everything looks perfect. This is going to be huge. Maria nodded, trying to match Kim's enthusiasm, but her mind was already racing. There was so much at stake, The eyes of the industry were on them, the expectations were high, and she had worked so hard to keep the team intact. Could they really pull this off? Before she could respond, a voice came over the speaker system, signaling the start of the event. Maria felt her heart race, her palms sweat. This was it, the moment she had been preparing for. She had successfully managed the chaos up to this point, but now, there was no turning back. "All right, let's do this," Maria muttered to herself as she took a deep breath. She knew she couldn't let the pressure control her. She had come this far, and now was the time to lead with the confidence and clarity she had worked so hard to build. The event kicked off with energy and excitement. The crowd of influencers, journalists, and industry professionals gathered around, eagerly awaiting the presentation. Maria stood at the edge of the stage, coordinating the flow, keeping an eye on her team, and ensuring everything went as planned. Despite her nerves, she was in her element, guiding everything with calm precision. As the keynote speaker began their presentation, Maria's mind wandered briefly to the past few months. The journey had been difficult, filled with challenges, late nights, and moments of self-doubt. But through it all, she had learned one crucial thing: she didn't need to be perfect. She just needed to be present, to lead with intention, and to trust her team. The speech ended, and the spotlight shifted back to Maria. It was time for her to take the stage. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. Her gaze swept across the crowd, her heart racing, but her mind calm. She was no longer just delivering a speech, she was owning this moment, every word, every breath. "This product is a reflection of everything we've worked for, the innovation, the passion, and the resilience that drives us every day. But most importantly, it's a reflection of the people behind it. The team that has supported each other through every challenge, and the community that believes in us." The crowd erupted in applause, and Maria couldn't help but feel a rush of pride. The pressure had been overwhelming at times, but now, standing before the audience, she realized that all the hard work had been worth it. She had led the team through the storm, and they had come out stronger on the other side. As the night progressed, Maria moved between different groups, shaking hands, answering questions, and overseeing every detail of the event. The tension that had weighed on her for so long began to melt away, replaced by a sense of accomplishment. She had done it, her team had done it. Despite every challenge, every setback, they had pulled off a flawless event. Kim approached her again as the event began to wind down, a gleam of pride in her eyes. "Maria, this is incredible. You've managed something that I didn't think was possible. You've turned what could have been a disaster into one of our most successful launches ever." Maria smiled, exhaustion flooding over her, but there was no denying the feeling of triumph. "We did it. It wasn't just me, it was the whole team. Everyone gave it their all." Kim placed a hand on Maria's shoulder. "And you led them. You showed them what it means to stay true to your values, even under pressure. That's why this launch is so successful. It's not just about the product, it's about what you've built here. You've created something that's more than just a brand, you've created a legacy." Maria's eyes filled with emotion. For the first time in a long while, she felt seen, not just as a leader, but as someone who had truly grown through every experience, every challenge. The pressures of the launch, the doubts she had faced along the way, were all part of the journey. But in this moment, it didn't matter. They had succeeded, together. As the event came to a close, Maria stepped outside into the cool night air. The sound of laughter and celebration echoed from inside the venue, but for a moment, Maria stood alone, breathing in the cool, fresh air. She closed her eyes, reflecting on everything that had led her here. She had come so far. And for the first time in a long while, she felt at peace with where she was. The pressure was gone, the hard work had paid off, and she was ready for whatever came next. The days following the launch event were a blur of congratulatory emails, interviews, and meetings with top executives. The team's hard work had paid off, what had been a potential disaster had turned into one of the company's most successful product launches. But while the world outside celebrated their triumph, Maria found herself grappling with something far more personal, the question of what came next. She had spent the last several months pushing herself to the limit, managing every detail of the project and keeping the team motivated. But now that the launch was behind her, there was an unsettling quiet in the air. She had fought so hard to achieve success, but with that success came a newfound pressure, one that felt different from before. Maria sat at her desk, reviewing the post-launch reports. Sales numbers were soaring, and the buzz around the product was electric. But despite the success, something was off. The exhilaration of the launch had worn off, and now, with everything settled, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was missing something important. What now? She asked herself. She had always been driven, always focused on the next big goal, but now, with the dust settling, she realized that she had neglected something vital, her own well-being. Her phone buzzed, breaking her train of thought. It was Kim. "I need you to come to my office. We need to talk about what's next for the team. The growth is phenomenal, but I want to make sure we're prepared for the future." Maria took a deep breath. She had already anticipated this conversation. Everyone was looking to her for the next big move, and the pressure was starting to build again. But this time, she knew she needed to be different. She couldn't just keep pushing herself and her team to the limit. She had to be more strategic, more intentional. When Maria entered Kim's office, she was met with a smile. Kim gestured for her to sit. "You've done an incredible job, Maria," Kim began. "The launch was a huge success, and I can't tell you how proud I am of you. You've shown leadership in ways I hadn't even imagined. But now, it's time to think bigger." Maria felt a knot in her stomach. She had expected praise, but she wasn't sure if she was ready for the pressure of what was coming next. Kim leaned forward, her expression serious. "We've got the market's attention, but now we have to capitalize on it. We need to plan for the next phase of growth, and I want you at the helm. What's your vision for the future of the company?" Maria hesitated. She had spent so much time focused on the present, on making sure the launch went smoothly, that she hadn't allowed herself to think beyond the immediate future. But now, the question loomed large. What did she want for the company? What kind of leader did she want to be moving forward? She sat back, considering her options. She had always been motivated by success, but now, she was beginning to realize that the constant drive for more was starting to take its toll. What she wanted was sustainability, both for the company and for herself. She didn't just want to keep pushing, only to burn out. She wanted to lead in a way that was thoughtful, that allowed room for personal growth, and that inspired her team to achieve long-term success, not just short-term wins. "I want to create a company that's not just about the bottom line," Maria said slowly, her voice steady but filled with conviction. "I want us to focus on building something sustainable. I want to make sure that we're not just growing fast, but we're growing in a way that's healthy, for the company, for the team, and for all of us as individuals." Kim listened carefully, nodding. "I like that. We've been in survival mode for so long, but now it's time to thrive." Maria smiled, feeling a sense of relief wash over her. She hadn't realized how much pressure she had been putting on herself until she voiced her vision for the future. It wasn't about doing everything all at once, it was about pacing herself, thinking strategically, and ensuring that everyone, herself included, was supported in the process. Kim leaned back in her chair. "I think that's exactly what we need. A leader who's focused on sustainability, on nurturing growth in a way that doesn't sacrifice well-being. I'm excited to see where you take this, Maria." Maria felt a sense of weight lift from her shoulders. For the first time in a long while, she didn't feel like she had to prove herself constantly. She had earned her place, and now, it was time to approach her role with a new perspective, one that prioritized balance, growth, and long-term success. As she left Kim's office, Maria felt a renewed sense of purpose. She wasn't just leading a company, she was leading her own life. And for the first time in a long while, she felt like she was on the right path, one that would allow her to continue achieving while also taking care of herself and the people around her. The next few weeks were a time of reflection and recalibration. Maria worked with her team to develop new goals that were centered around sustainability and long-term impact. She took steps to integrate more self-care into her routine, ensuring that she wasn't running on empty. Slowly but surely, she found a new rhythm, one that allowed her to be the leader she had always wanted to be, without sacrificing her own happiness in the process. The company continued to thrive, but this time, Maria was leading it in a way that felt right, not just for the team, but for herself. She was no longer just chasing success. She was building it, step by step, with a clear vision of the future. It had been months since the launch event, and things at the company were moving smoothly. The new strategies Maria had implemented were starting to take root, and the team was more cohesive than ever. The company was growing steadily, and Maria was starting to feel like she had truly found her rhythm. But as the saying goes, success breeds competition. Maria's phone buzzed on her desk, and she picked it up to see an email from her trusted team member, Noah. The subject line sent a shiver down her spine: urgent, competitor announcement, immediate attention required. With a sigh, Maria clicked open the email. As she read through the brief, her heart sank. One of the company's biggest competitors, a rapidly growing tech company with a large market share, had just announced a new product that was incredibly similar to theirs. Not only that, but it was priced aggressively lower, and they had already secured major endorsements from high-profile influencers. The competition had been following their success closely, and now, it seemed like they were poised to steal the spotlight. Maria leaned back in her chair, running a hand through her hair. This wasn't just another bump in the road. This was a direct threat to everything they had worked so hard to build. She quickly gathered her leadership team for an emergency meeting. Kim, Noah, and the others filed into the conference room, each looking serious. The air was thick with the weight of the situation. "This is bigger than we expected," Maria said, standing at the head of the table, her voice steady but filled with urgency. "They're targeting the exact same market we are, and they're coming for us with a stronger product and bigger names behind them. We need a plan, and we need it now." Kim nodded. "We've seen the announcement. It's a game changer. We've already started seeing some shifts in our customer base, but we need to act fast before this gets out of hand." Noah added, "I've spoken with our marketing team. We'll need to ramp up our outreach and get our product in front of the right people. But we can't just rely on that. We need something bold, something that sets us apart and makes our product irresistible." Maria paused, thinking about the direction they should take. The pressure was mounting, and every decision from here on out would be crucial. In the past, she might have tried to outdo the competition with sheer force: more ads, bigger campaigns, faster production. But now, with her new vision, she knew that wasn't the answer. The realization hit her like a wave: this wasn't about beating them at their own game, it was about staying true to what made them different in the first place. Maria's eyes lit up as the solution began to form in her mind. What if we turn the narrative on its head? Instead of fighting them directly, we focus on what makes us unique, what sets us apart from everyone else. We've always prided ourselves on quality and authenticity. Let's double down on that. Let's show the world that we're not just another tech company trying to sell a product. We're a movement, a community. Kim raised an eyebrow, intrigued. A community? Maria nodded. Yes. We've built something real with our brand. It's not just about selling products. It's about creating value, about making people feel like they're part of something bigger. Let's reframe this competition as an opportunity to show our customers why they chose us in the first place, because we offer more than just a product. We offer a purpose. There was a brief silence in the room as the team absorbed her words. Maria could see the shift in their faces. The tension had lifted, replaced by a renewed sense of direction. They didn't need to beat the competitor at their game, they needed to stay authentic to who they were and lead with purpose. Noah broke the silence. I like it. It's bold. It's the kind of thing that will resonate with our audience. We'll have to move fast, but I think it's exactly what we need. Kim smiled, her eyes gleaming with approval. Let's do it. It's time to remind everyone what we're really about. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of strategy sessions, product rebranding, and focused marketing. Maria worked closely with the team, ensuring that their messaging was clear and consistent. They launched a campaign that emphasized their core values: authenticity, quality, and community. They leveraged their existing customer base, encouraging them to share their experiences and be part of the company's story. They didn't just want to sell a product, they wanted to inspire people to be a part of something meaningful. The response was overwhelming. Customers and influencers alike rallied behind the new campaign. It wasn't just about price anymore, it was about trust, about feeling connected to a brand that genuinely cared. But even as the tide began to turn in their favor, Maria knew that the battle wasn't over. The competitor was still out there, still pushing forward. This would be a marathon, not a sprint. She had to remain vigilant, continue to innovate, and always stay true to her vision. As the weeks passed, the company's growth continued at a steady pace. The new campaign was a success, and while they hadn't completely outpaced the competitor, they had solidified their place in the market. They were no longer just trying to keep up, they were defining their own path. Maria sat back one evening, watching the team celebrate their progress. They had faced a serious challenge and come out stronger on the other side. For the first time in a long while, she felt a sense of calm. She had led with purpose and had stayed true to her vision. That, she realized, was the key to their success, not just fighting for the top spot, but staying authentic to what they believed in. As the team celebrated their hard-fought victory, Maria felt a new sense of confidence. The world of business was competitive, yes, but if she had learned one thing, it was this: true leadership didn't come from defeating others. It came from staying true to yourself and inspiring others to do the same. The weeks after the competitor's campaign were filled with a sense of accomplishment. The company had weathered the storm, and Maria felt like she was on the cusp of something even bigger. Her leadership was stronger than ever, and the team was more united in their purpose. But amidst the success, an unexpected storm was brewing in her personal life. Maria's phone buzzed one evening, interrupting her thoughts as she sat on the balcony of her apartment, taking in the city lights. She had been enjoying a rare moment of peace, the kind she hadn't allowed herself in a long time. The message was from her brother, James. "Hey Maria, I need to talk. It's important." Her heart skipped a beat. James rarely asked for help, especially when it came to serious matters. She immediately called him back. "James, what's going on?" she asked, trying to keep her voice calm. There was a long pause before he responded. I'm in some trouble, Maria. I've been dealing with some personal stuff, and it's gotten worse. I don't know who else to turn to." Maria's mind raced. Her brother had always been the strong one in their family, the one who took care of things. But now, it seemed like he was in need of help, and she wasn't sure how to respond. The truth was, their relationship had been strained in recent years. Between the demands of her career and the distance that had grown between them, they hadn't been as close as they once were. "I'm here for you, James," she said, trying to mask the uncertainty in her voice. "What's going on?" "It's complicated," he replied, his voice tight with emotion. "But I've gotten myself into some financial trouble, and I'm afraid it might get worse. I don't know where to go from here." Maria's stomach tightened. She knew that James had struggled with financial stability for years, but she hadn't realized how deep the problem had become. She had always been focused on her career and hadn't noticed the signs of trouble until now. It was a stark reminder of how much she had neglected her personal relationships in the pursuit of success. "I'll help you," Maria said, without hesitation. "We'll figure this out together. Just tell me what needs to be done." The next few days were a blur. Maria flew to her hometown to meet with James and get a clearer picture of his situation. As she sat across from him, she could see the weight of the world on his shoulders. He looked worn out, desperate even. The problems he was facing were far bigger than she had imagined, and they went beyond just financial issues. There were deeper emotional struggles that he hadn't shared with her. The tension between them was palpable, and Maria felt a wave of guilt wash over her. She had been so focused on her work, so consumed by her career, that she hadn't seen the warning signs. She had failed to be there for her brother when he needed her most. "You don't have to do this alone," Maria said, her voice softening as she reached out to him. "I know I've been distant, but I'm here now. We're family. We'll get through this together." James met her eyes, a flicker of hope in his gaze. "Thanks, Maria. I don't know what I would have done without you." But as she helped James navigate his financial mess, Maria realized that this situation was more than just about fixing a problem. It was about reconnecting with her family, healing the emotional rift that had formed between them over the years. It was about finding balance in her life, something she had neglected in her pursuit of professional success. The time spent with James was exhausting, both emotionally and mentally. But it also gave Maria a new perspective. For the first time in a long time, she found herself questioning the way she had been living. Was her relentless drive for success worth sacrificing her personal connections? Was she really living the life she wanted, or was she just moving through the motions, trying to prove something to herself and the world? By the time she returned to the city, Maria had made a decision. She couldn't continue living the way she had been, constantly putting work first, ignoring her own well-being, and sacrificing her relationships for the sake of success. She had learned a hard lesson: success meant nothing if it came at the cost of the people who mattered most. Back at work, Maria made a conscious effort to change her approach. She started delegating more, trusting her team to take on responsibilities that she had previously kept for herself. She took time each day to check in with her family and friends, making sure to nurture the relationships that had been neglected during her climb to the top. Her leadership style also began to evolve. She focused not only on the success of the company but on the well-being of the team. She implemented new wellness programs, encouraged work-life balance, and made sure to create a culture that valued personal time just as much as professional achievement. She wanted her team to thrive both at work and in their personal lives, and she knew that leading by example was the best way to inspire them. As the weeks passed, Maria's life began to feel more balanced. Her work was still important, but she no longer let it define her. She had learned to find joy in the little things, like spending time with her family, taking weekend hikes, and simply enjoying life without the constant pressure to do more, be more. But the most significant change came when Maria realized that she didn't need to prove anything to anyone. She didn't have to be the perfect leader, the perfect sister, or the perfect employee. All she needed to do was stay true to herself and find a way to lead with authenticity, compassion, and purpose. Maria sat in her office, staring at the phone in her hand. She had just received a call from her CFO, Olivia, with some troubling news. One of their most significant investors, someone who had been with them since the early days, was threatening to pull out of the company. "Maria," Olivia had said, "they're not happy with the direction things are going. They're concerned about our profitability this quarter, and they feel like we're taking too many risks with the new initiatives." Maria's mind raced as she considered the implications. Losing this investor would mean losing not just capital but also credibility. They had worked so hard to build the company's reputation, and this threat felt like a punch to the gut. It wasn't just about money, it was about trust. Trust that she had worked hard to earn, both within the company and with investors. She exhaled slowly, trying to process the information. "I'll handle it," she said, her voice firm. Thank you for letting me know. Let's talk about next steps later. After hanging up, Maria leaned back in her chair. She had always been driven by a need to prove herself, to show that she could build something successful from the ground up. But now, with her leadership being tested like never before, she was starting to realize that true leadership wasn't just about having the answers. It was about learning how to trust the people around her and delegate when necessary. The next few days were filled with back-to-back meetings. Maria met with the rest of the leadership team to brainstorm a strategy for appeasing the investor and ensuring their confidence in the company's future. But as the hours wore on, Maria found herself struggling. She had always prided herself on being hands-on, but the weight of the situation was overwhelming. She couldn't do it all by herself. "Maria, we need your guidance on this," Kim said during one of their meetings. "But you also have to trust us to handle the details. If you try to micromanage every aspect, you'll burn yourself out. You've got a team here who's more than capable of stepping up." Maria paused. Kim was right. She had spent so much time trying to control every aspect of the company that she had neglected the very thing that made her a strong leader in the first place, trusting her team. After a long pause, Maria nodded. "You're right. I've been trying to manage everything myself, but that's not sustainable. I trust you all, and I need to step back and let you take the reins." It wasn't easy for Maria to let go. She had always been the one to make decisions, to take charge. But as she watched her team step in and take ownership of the situation, she began to see the value of delegating and trusting those around her. Over the next week, the team worked tirelessly on a strategy to win back the investors' trust. They crafted a plan that focused on increased transparency, outlining the potential for long-term profitability while reassuring the investor that the risks they were taking were calculated and well thought out. Maria made sure to stay involved in the process, but she allowed her team to lead the charge. Finally, the day came when they presented the plan to the investor. Maria, along with Olivia and Kim, sat in the boardroom as the investor listened intently to their proposal. The tension in the room was palpable, but Maria remained calm. She knew that they had done everything they could to ensure the company's future, and now, it was time to trust the process. The investor's response was a relief. After a long, silent pause, he nodded slowly. "This is exactly what I needed to see. I'm impressed with how you've handled the situation. I'll stay on board for now, but I want to see continued progress in the coming months." As Maria walked out of the meeting, she felt a weight lift off her shoulders. They had done it. They had earned the investors' trust back, and more importantly, she had learned a valuable lesson about leadership. Trust wasn't just about delegating tasks, it was about fostering a culture where everyone felt empowered to take ownership and contribute their expertise. Maria realized that leadership wasn't a solo endeavor, it was a collaborative process, one that required both trust and vulnerability. The days following the successful meeting were filled with a sense of accomplishment. Maria found herself reflecting on how far she had come as a leader. She had learned to let go of her need to control every aspect of the company, and in doing so, she had strengthened her team and built a more resilient organization. But the true test of her leadership was just beginning. There would always be challenges ahead, always new obstacles to overcome. But Maria had come to understand that the key to navigating those challenges wasn't in having all the answers, it was in building a team that could face them together. As she sat back in her office that evening, Maria smiled to herself. She had started this journey unsure of what the future would hold. But now, she knew that with trust, collaboration, and a deep sense of purpose, she could face anything that came her way. Maria had always prided herself on making calculated decisions. She was methodical, thorough, and careful, but over the past few weeks, something had shifted within her. Perhaps it was the confidence gained from overcoming obstacles, or maybe it was the belief that they were ready to take bolder risks. Either way, Maria had made a decision that, in hindsight, might have been too risky for the company. The initiative was simple, launching a groundbreaking product in a new market that would bring in more revenue than ever before. The market research was promising, and everything seemed to align. But the launch hadn't gone as planned. Despite the company's best efforts, the new product had flopped. Sales numbers were disappointing, the marketing campaign didn't resonate with customers the way they had hoped, and now they were facing the possibility of a public backlash. It was a hard pill to swallow, especially after Maria had convinced investors and the board to take the plunge. Now, she sat in her office, staring at the latest report on her desk. The numbers were glaring at her, and the reality of the situation was impossible to ignore. The company had taken a massive financial hit. It wasn't just a failure, it was a wake-up call. "Maria," Kim said as she knocked and entered the room, her expression serious but compassionate. "We need to talk." Maria didn't even look up. "I know," she muttered. "I messed up." Kim sat across from her, placing a hand on the desk. "We all took a risk, Maria. No one can predict everything. We can fix this, but we need to make a plan. Right now, you're spiraling, and the team is feeling that." Maria finally lifted her eyes to meet Kim's gaze. "It's just. I should have known better. I should have seen this coming. Now, we're in damage control mode, and I don't even know where to start." Kim sighed. "Nobody's perfect. Not even you. You took a chance, and it didn't pay off this time. That's life. But it's not the end. We have the ability to learn from this." Maria closed her eyes, trying to shake off the weight of the failure. "What if I've lost their trust? What if the investors pull out? What if this leads to the company's downfall?" Kim's voice was firm but understanding. "You're a leader, Maria. Leaders fall. They make mistakes. But leaders also get back up. And they don't do it alone. You've built a team that believes in you. Don't let this one setback define you." Maria's mind was still spinning, but Kim's words slowly started to sink in. She had spent so much time focused on being perfect, on avoiding mistakes, that she had forgotten what it meant to embrace the imperfections of leadership. It wasn't about avoiding failure, it was about learning from it, adapting, and rising stronger. That afternoon, Maria called for a meeting with the leadership team. They gathered in a conference room, each of them looking to her for direction. She could feel the weight of the room's expectations on her shoulders. They needed to see that she was still the leader they had followed through thick and thin. "Team," Maria began, her voice steady but with a hint of vulnerability, "I want to acknowledge something. I made a decision that didn't work out the way we hoped. This launch has not gone as planned, and the results are disappointing. But I'm not here to point fingers or make excuses. I'm here to own it. I made the call, and now we're facing the consequences." There was a pause as the team absorbed her words. Some of them exchanged glances, but no one spoke. "I'm not going to pretend that everything is fine," Maria continued. "This is a setback, no doubt. But we're not defined by our mistakes. We're defined by how we respond to them. And right now, we need to respond as a team. I need your help, and together, we will turn this around." For the first time in weeks, Maria felt the weight of the situation lift slightly. By acknowledging her failure, by being vulnerable with her team, she could feel their support solidifying around her. They were in this together, and that was something she could count on. Over the next few weeks, the team rallied. They worked tirelessly to reevaluate the failed product, making adjustments based on customer feedback. The marketing approach was reworked to be more aligned with what the target audience wanted. It was a process of trial and error, but little by little, they began to see progress. Maria made sure to stay involved in every step, not as the one in charge of everything, but as the one who facilitated and supported the efforts of her team. She was no longer trying to shoulder every burden on her own. She had learned that leadership wasn't about having all the answers, it was about guiding the team through the tough times and empowering them to come up with solutions. It wasn't long before the adjusted product started to gain traction. Sales numbers began to rise, albeit slowly, but there was a renewed sense of hope. Maria could see it in the eyes of her team. They had weathered the storm together, and now, they were stronger for it. Maria stood in front of the team during a final meeting about the product's future. "I want to thank each and every one of you for your hard work," she said. "This was a tough situation, and while we didn't get everything right, we learned. We learned how to adapt, how to pivot, and most importantly, we learned that failure isn't the end, it's just part of the process." As she spoke, Maria realized that the true strength of the company wasn't in their flawless execution, it was in their ability to pick themselves up after falling. They had proven to themselves that no failure was too big to overcome, and that they were capable of achieving success, even if it meant taking a few missteps along the way. Maria smiled to herself. The journey was far from over. The road ahead would undoubtedly have its challenges, but now, she knew that with trust, resilience, and a willingness to embrace the lessons from failure, they could overcome anything. Maria sat in her office, watching the sun begin to set over the city. It had been a long, hard road to get here, but the company was in a place of stability, and her leadership had evolved into something stronger, something she could be proud of. As she gazed out the window, Maria reflected on the journey she had undertaken. She had started out unsure, filled with self-doubt and the pressure of proving herself. The ups and downs, the risks, the failures, and the triumphs had all shaped her into the leader she had become. It wasn't just about business anymore, it was about the people who had supported her along the way, the team that had helped her rise from one challenge to the next. Her phone buzzed on the desk, pulling her out of her thoughts. It was a message from Kim. "Team dinner at 7 tonight. Let's celebrate our win, and everything that got us here. You in?" Maria smiled. It had become a tradition. Every time they achieved something meaningful, they gathered to reflect and celebrate. Tonight's dinner would be especially significant. After everything they had been through, the failures, the tough decisions, the moments of doubt, they were finally at a place where they could breathe easy and look forward to the future. She quickly replied, "I wouldn't miss it for the world." As the evening drew near, Maria made her way to the restaurant where the team had gathered. The air was filled with laughter and clinking glasses as everyone mingled and shared stories of their struggles and successes. There was a sense of camaraderie in the air, a feeling of shared victory. Maria took a seat at the head of the table, surrounded by the people who had helped her become the leader she was today. Kim, Olivia, and the others all looked at her with smiles that reflected not just the success they had achieved, but the bond they had formed through their journey together. "We've come a long way," Maria said, raising her glass. "And I couldn't have done it without each and every one of you. I've learned that leadership isn't just about being the one in charge. It's about guiding and supporting the people around you. And most importantly, it's about learning from the mistakes we make and using them to get stronger." The room was silent for a moment, everyone taking in her words. Then Kim raised her glass. "To Maria, the leader who taught us all that we're stronger together than apart." The group toasted, and Maria felt a sense of fulfillment wash over her. She had come to understand that leadership was not about perfection, it was about growth, resilience, and the willingness to keep moving forward, no matter the setbacks. Together, they had weathered the storms and emerged more powerful than ever. Later that night, as Maria walked home from the dinner, her thoughts wandered to the future. There was still so much to be done, new challenges, new markets, and more decisions to make. But she was no longer afraid. The uncertainty that once loomed large in her mind was now something she could embrace with confidence. She had learned that true leadership wasn't about controlling everything. It was about trust in her team, in the process, and in herself. It was about facing failure head-on and using it as fuel for growth. It was about building something that lasted, not just for herself, but for the people who depended on her. As Maria reached her apartment and opened the door, she felt a sense of peace. The future was full of possibilities, and she was ready for whatever came next. With the lessons of the past behind her and a renewed sense of purpose, she knew that this was just the beginning. Maria smiled, feeling the weight of her transformation settle into her bones. She was no longer the uncertain woman who had started this journey. She was a leader, stronger, wiser, and ready to take on whatever challenges lay ahead. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?